Good afternoon, Victoria. How are you today?
Good afternoon, Dawn. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I cannot believe we're almost at the end. Well, we are at the end of
I
July,
know. It's
but
crazy.
summer is flying by.
Exactly. I can't believe I don't know where the time's gone.
And I know we have a ton to talk about, so we should dive in.
Sure.
Let's start with I know you just got your regional updates and fresh off the meetings today. So, what
Yeah.
can you share about that?
Well, yeah, we had a good talk with the group across Canada, and things are, overall looking great, really. Starting out in BC, weather's been very cooperative. They've had a good season so far, and they're already into their yellows now. The warbas are sort of winding up end of August, or July, I should say, and starting up on yellows, and reds will be coming, or actually starting now. So, things going well in BC. They're very happy with what they're seeing coming out of the ground. Good quality, and yeah, very pleased with that.
I always hear about warbas,
Yes,
sorry, and I just have not had a chance to find them, try them yet. So,
and you're seeing them now in Alberta on ad. So
I
they
need
are
to check.
still this week. They were still on ad in Alberta,
Okay.
so you should be able to find them. And they're quite good. They're very unique, and coming all the way out to Alberta. So
Nice.
definitely give them a try. So moving across Saskatchewan, the same similar patterns. I mean, they've had some issues with smoke, obviously in the province. They're still sort of evaluating, and that's the research that I've seen so far on the impact of smoke from the forest fires. It's a couple of years ago it really started up in earnest, with the fires that we've been having, and no definitive clear link yet to a significant drop in yield or anything like that. We know there's got to be some impact on the plants because they're just not getting this same amount of sunshine, but
Right.
so they've been dealing with that and still sort of evaluating the impact, but nothing serious so far that they've seen. No major issues across the country, really. Manitoba would be similar. Quebec, the spring was tough in the east. Definitely cold and wet spring that
Yeah.
caused delays in planting. New Brunswick, Quebec, and some parts of Ontario as well. So there are growers that are still, a week behind. The crop has caught up a lot with the weather we've had since. We've had some really hot weather in July, as you may know, but so crops are catching up, but still probably, a good week behind last year. Now, last year was a different year, but even behind, like say 5 days behind normal. So
Yeah.
we are seeing a difference there. Whites are on market in Ontario and Quebec and through the Maritimes. So those early crop whites are definitely out and on market. And yellows and reds are starting to be top killed in most of the East as well. So except for PEI. Everybody overall happy with the crop to date, cautiously optimistic. The island is getting very dry, more so in the east than the west, but still they don't have as much irrigation as some of the other provinces. Most of it's dry land, but so they depend on that rain. So they're hoping for some rain soon. There isn't a lot in the forecast, so we hope through August they're going to get some rain. Quebec's been interesting because when they've gotten rain, it's been very heavy dumps of rain.
Oh,
So, the growers want that nice steady showers, which is nice. So
yeah.
they've had a couple drownouts. So it's been very sporadic throughout the province. And then some areas are getting 3 inches at a time and then nothing for 2 weeks. So it's been kind of up and down. Irrigation is helping a lot of the regions this year. Definitely. Alberta is very dry. And so they've been irrigating even early. BC has been irrigating quite a bit. So lots of those that have irrigation have definitely been using it this year. So
I have many relatives in BC who say that it has been hot, hot, hot.
yeah,
So
yeah,
in Alberta,
yeah.
we've had sort of sporadic. It's been hot for 2 or 3 days. We're currently in a hot spell, but then just pours, like downpours, and then wind. The wind has been horrendous.
Well, and I heard Southern Alberta got a hailstorm as
Yes.
well recently, and I tried to reach out to some of the growers there. They're still kind of assessing the damage. It's funny. The hail can come in different periods where sometimes if it's young, the plant can just recover and keep going. You're at the point of rows closed. Does that help protect it from the rain?
Right.
The hail, the plant might not be good, but the tubers might still be fine. So I don't know. I think they're still assessing what the damage is at this point. But yeah. So definitely erratic weather, but
That's
hot. Like you said, in all areas, it's been very warm.
very warm. Yeah. You started off by saying that overall it was looking really good. I understand that also we have our planted acreage report south.
We do. StatsCan has released their report on mid-July. On the 18th, I believe, they released the acreage report. Overall, Canada down 0.1%, so very little, almost online with last year. 394,477 last year and 394,215 this year. So 200 acres down, 250 acres down. But you can see some regional differences. So PEI is actually up. We had kind of predicted them to be fairly flat, but they are up. And that's just good market in PEI. Processing did not receive the volume cuts that other areas did. So So their acreage is up at 87,300. So up about 2% from last year. New Brunswick is down a bit, not as much as I expected with the volume cuts, but I think the volume cuts just came so late that, people were sort of planned and going forward with planting. So they're only down slightly. The question mark we have is for Quebec. They've been published at 51,885 acres. That's about 4,655 acres higher than last year. So we have some real questions about that. I spoke with most of the growers and the Grower Association in Quebec, and I even spoke with Info Statistique, who are actually the people that do the survey and provide that number to StatsCan.
Right.
So StatsCan really doesn't have any, they just publish the number they're given. And we think there was just an issue in terms of the survey, the fewer respondents, which kind of changes the weighting on the smaller and larger farms and can cause some extrapolation issues. So we really don't think the acreage is going to be that high in Quebec. It'll probably be closer to that 48,000 acres, closer to what was last year. Ontario's up a bit, right in line with what we were thinking. Manitoba shows down from 78.6 to 68.2. We think that number is also too low. So we've spoken with the organizations in Manitoba, and we think it is closer to the 72.9. I think United, we had predicted 72.6 or something like that. So definitely a decrease. They were hit with the processing cuts for sure, and there's the bulk of the potatoes in Manitoba are really for processing. So
right.
Definitely a decrease there, but not to the significance that StatsCan reported, in our opinion. So, and then the balance, Alberta is up. People are surprised with the processing cuts, but they have the expansion at the Coaldale facility. So that has, they didn't have the same cuts that everyone else did. So, because they need the potatoes for that expansion. So they are back up after a drop last year. They're back up to 80,000 acres. So they are, second after PEI at this point. And BC is stable. Saskatchewan was a bit of a question mark for me as well. StatsCan has them down a little bit. I had them up a little bit. So talking with the growers in Saskatchewan and stuff, we really feel that perhaps there were growers either not surveyed or just an extrapolation error. But we believe that they will be at minimum stable to last year, if not up a bit. So that's where we are overall. So some dips and some highs and lows there, and so overall coming out pretty close to last year's acreage count in Canada, which is still a record, for Canada. So It's been a long time we've been at this level. So
and such a great, a positive thing considering all the uncertainties that we were facing going into this season, right?
Exactly. And with the crop that we're having so far, even with a slight dip in acreage, we think production will come out pretty close, if not a little bit more. We do have a month to go before harvest. We're far from getting the storage crop in, but in terms of if we took an average yield and, an average abandonment, et cetera, still coming out probably close to 128 million hundredweight potatoes in
Wow.
production in Canada. So still a very, very good crop. And, that's the good news. There are a lot of marketers that are I was saying that this morning on our call that, the positive is it's a great crop. I mean, this is what producers want. We
Yeah.
want to grow great potatoes, right? Quality is good. The crop is looking good. Yields are looking good so far. And it's more on the marketing side of things when we get a little nervous, because now we get into the size of the pile of potatoes. And not necessarily in Canada alone, we're probably okay, but the impact of the US pile. So we haven't really talked about that. Their acreage as well is predicted as slightly down, but they're in the same issue. The growing season across the US has been excellent. Even words like spectacular used to describe the Idaho crop. So we're looking at pretty good yields in the U.S. as well to date, and what we're seeing being pulled from the field. So there will be, predicted to be a lot of potatoes in North America. So I think that's where people start to get a little bit concerned in terms of what will the impact of the U.S. pile be on our production, like our marketability in Canada. But we've weathered the storm last year very well. Our pricing held well. I think Canadians did an excellent job marketing the potatoes this year. So,
Yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be able to do the same thing again this year. So
I feel like across North America, there's just been sort of like a rebranding of potatoes in general, and that sort of shifts consumer demand and
yeah,
we're moving away from that. Potatoes are bad because they're carb, whatever,
yes,
into more like
absolutely.
actually they're good for you.
The work of educating consumers on the nutritional value is coming to fruition, I think,
Yeah.
in terms of consumption. We did talk about, though, the impact of weather. Having all this hot weather, people aren't in the kitchen over the stove cooking potatoes, and how has that impacted demand? So
Right.
lots of dynamics happening on the fresh side, and even more so on the processing side. That's where things are really, there's a lot of action on the processing side, the volume cuts that happened. So a lot of potatoes still got planted. So then now they're open market potatoes, and what will happen to them. There were also out of Idaho, a lot of processing seed returned, and fresh varieties taken and planted instead. So, there is an impact there in terms of where the processing going and how that's impacting the fresh side as well. So yeah, we try to keep an eye on the full pile. So,
And of course, speaking of the US, we're in yet
yes,
another period of uncertainty as we look
yeah,
down the barrel of new tariffs potentially tomorrow. So
yes,
where do we sit
yes.
with that? I know there are some factors that will impact it.
Yes, exactly. I'm still, if CUSMA, the Canadian, U.S., Mexico trade agreement stays in place as it should until 2026, technically, potatoes in all forms are covered under that agreement. So we are okay in terms of tariffs, and that's why we've been doing well when that got changed back in the spring. But I'm not honestly sure with the new tariff threatened, the 35%, I think, on Canada as of August 1st is going to override that. So when he had first put the tariffs on, it was on everything. And then he sort of backtracked with the CUSMA part of it. Will that be the same again? And I wish I could give you a firm answer on that. And unfortunately, I'm not sure,
Right.
not able to say with confidence that we will be out of the tariffs. I am again optimistic that the CUSMA will stay in place and potatoes will be fine in terms of that tariff. But again, nothing's 100% necessarily with our fellow south of the border. So
Of course. I think we've
yeah,
talked many times over the last few months about making sure we can just take care of what we can control. And obviously,
yeah.
what they're doing across the border, we can't control. We can't control Mother Nature, but it sounds like the items within our control, our growers have been doing excellent work in that regard. So,
Yes, I really think so. I think so. I think that probably New Brunswick was hardest hit with that tariff uncertainty. There were some states in the eastern seaboard that took advantage of that period and really went after customers and took orders. So I think they've been kind of dealing with that out there in New Brunswick. But, other than that, people have worked hard to, emphasize long-term relationships and try to keep things, moving and moving cross border. They need us for, there's a reason they buy from us in the first place. So they want to have those potatoes. So we, try to work hard on those relationships and keep satisfying those customers. So
we are already entering harvest in some areas.
Yes.
So anything we need to be on the lookout for, or your predictions on?
I mean, I think I don't hear as much in terms of disease pressure this year necessarily, but that's obviously something that the seed growers are looking for. We had seen some virus pressure out west that we hadn't, like last year and maybe a bit, probably more last year, that hadn't been seen before. So, people have been keeping an eye out for that. But I haven't heard any major issues. I don't want anybody to start panicking, but no, I haven't heard anything particular. There were some articles out there about watching out for blight in Ontario. So Quebec obviously will be keeping an eye on that. Although the conditions here, I don't think are necessarily. But again, people keeping an eye on that through August for the late blight. But again, no serious concerns have been raised to me in particular at this point. So it's really Mother Nature, I think people are watching out for at this point. And how we're going to fare in August. Again, PEI looking for some rain. New Brunswick hasn't been too bad. The southern parts, the closer you get to the island, might be a little drier, but in general, okay. And then the heat we've had in Ontario and Quebec, and making sure we get some timely rain. So all of that, I think people are just keeping an eye, getting that early crop, those early reds and yellows out of the ground, and start getting that on market. And then we'll see how the storage crop goes. There's September can be the hurricane season. There's always something coming with Mother Nature, so you never know what's coming down the pipe. But so far so good. I think people are cautiously optimistic, happy with what they've seen so far, test digs and stuff like that. So I think that part of it's good. In the U.S., a similar thing. The carton market had gotten a bit of a boost. There was a lack of availability of cartons. I tried to get that across to some of our Canadian group to say, hey, if you've got stock, if you've got storage, the carton market's open for you. There was some very good pricing. I think that's going to start leveling off now that Columbia Basin is starting to come into the market with their crop.
Right.
So some of that pricing will start to level off a bit. There are still a lot of potatoes in Idaho, but it's the packability, not real world, but the marketability of that crop, not so much. There was a bit of an open door there for a little bit, but I think that's starting to close. And Big Lake is coming on early with their reds. They're probably a week early. Their crop's very good. So they're coming into market. This Florida kern are starting to, they've dropped off. Southwest is sort of peaked, I think, and coming off a little bit. So all those dynamics are in play right now. And we'll see, because it's different with some regions being a bit behind in the east and a couple being a little bit ahead in the Pacific Northwest. It's, seeing where those crops come into market at what time. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping everything goes in our favor.
Absolutely. Exactly. We're going to try to be optimistic here and hope that things go well for the next month or so.
Fingers crossed that when we meet next month for our next update, we are in a good news situation again.
Absolutely. Exactly.
As always, I thank you for your time, Victoria.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.